Maps. The basic building block of any game, regardless of whether it's a shooter or an RPG. You need to have a map if you want to play a game. Well, unless you're playing Pong, but who cares about Pong anymore? Deadline has around 9 maps, which is actually pretty few for a shooter. However, they're large enough and in most cases interesting enough that they don't really get any more boring. As such, there have been favorites and there have been least favorites, I'll say. So today we're going to be talking about each map and we're going to put them on the tier list. But before we start, a few disclaimers. 1. This is entirely my opinion. If you disagree, then you are entitled to your own opinion. However, don't go hate in the comments just because you don't agree with me. And second, we'll be actually using 3 tier lists in this video. The first one is the gameplay tier list, how the map functions in terms of gameplay. The second tier list is the appearance tier list, which depends on just the base appearance of the level, and we're gonna be taking into account some of the older iterations of each map. And the third one is the atmosphere tier list. This measures how you actually feel when you play this game, because Deadline has a certain vibe that is either made better or completely screwed over by certain maps. So that's all I have to say. Let's get into it.
Command, Eagle Switch 1-4. We advise that football response sequence. Confirm. Over. Roger that, kill switch. You have good location? Stand by. I'm looking at you. Building 4. You get on that. Building 4. Got it. Okay.
Alright, our first map on today's list is Sandstorm. Sandstorm is notorious among lower end PCs for being unable to be run because of the sheer amount of items. Even when you turn on the setting that lowers the item count. However, I found in my experience, even with the 13-year-old Mac Pro that is sitting right in front of me, I'm still able to get decent performance around 60 FPS on this map. Gameplay wise though, even though this isn't really seeming like a very varied map, this is actually a really diverse map in terms of combat areas. You have the main clearing, which is this large L-shaped area with access to points C and points A. This is probably one of my favorite open areas in the game, as it perfectly covers some areas with the presence of trucks, but at the same time there are open areas that you can be sniped by, so that if anyone is stupid enough to move without zigzagging or making any evasionary maneuvers, you're not gonna be rewarded. You're in fact gonna be killed for it. When it comes to the buildings though, I actually really enjoy this map. It's probably the best CQB you'll ever find in this game. As many people I've talked to have said, this is peak Deadline CQB. The 3 main buildings are the warehouse building, where it's 2 levels up and down. There's a good mix of mid-range and extremely close-range fights. It's truly peak CQB in there. But there's also this glass building on the Sino or security side, if you're an OG player, that also has a lot of good CQB possibilities, because it connects to the warehouse building, and through the warehouse building and the glass building's choke point, it's really fun to engage in firefights with a shotgun or a close range AR there. Then we have the C point and the smaller warehouse, which is on the Anto or Insurgent side if you're an OG player. I also enjoyed this area. I think it could have some improvements, but as of right now, it's actually a really good area. The only thing I'd say I'd change about this map in terms of layout is the central Anto area that leads into the main warehouse building. It used to be another warehouse which I actually really enjoyed, but they changed it to another open area, which I don't enjoy as much, but it's still pretty good regardless. So I'd say that Sandstorm would get an S tier in terms of gameplay. It is simply unmatched in terms of CQB, and there are some really good opportunities for longer range firefights as well. Some of my best plays have been on this map with an M4 Block 2 or my personal shotgun system. Decor wise, it is actually my second favorite map of any of them. It's pretty detailed. I do like that it's not like blue barrels like New Shipment, and it's still pretty varied. I like the play with the Maserk things that are supposed to parody Maersk and other little details that just make it feel lived in. This was actually known as Tel Aviv in the game files up until recently, and I think that from pictures I've seen of Tel Aviv Yafo, this is really a good resemblance to a industrial area, even in the place where I live. So Sandstorm is also going to get an S tier in the decor or appearance department. As for atmosphere, I do really like it. The ambience is amazing. It's probably the second best in the game. It's eclipsed by one map, which we'll get to later, trust me. But I think it's overshadowed by that map, and in general, when there isn't many sounds, it's a bit too quiet, and when the plane appears above, it's way too loud and the gunshots get drowned out in a way that is actually pretty annoying. So it's gonna get an A. That's all for Sandstorm. Let's move on to our next map. Next up is Downtown. I don't really have much to say about this map because it's not finished, but from the parts that we do have, it's really just an okay map. For gameplay, well, it's CQB, yeah, CQB is good, but the problem is, it's the same kind of CQB around here. It's not varied like in Sandstorm, where there's a kind of CQB that requires this kind of gameplay, and another side of CQB which requires this kind of playstyle. No, that doesn't happen here. Everything is most likely the same. There also aren't many, like, combat at long range or mid-range opportunities except down the long straights, but they're really boxed in and it's really not a good experience. So overall, I have mixed feelings on this map. Though I may get a lot of kills, it doesn't feel rewarding like on Sandstorm or on, say, Pearl or DTV, because those maps had just a tad bit more variety, that it was actually rewarding when you killed a lot of people, whereas here people are going down the same areas, so it's really just a zombie horde game now. So this is gonna get a solid B. It's not bad, but it's not my favorite either. As for the decor, it's kind of it's not good, that's for sure. It doesn't even crack a B, but it's not so offensive that it's bad like some other maps, so it's going to get a C in my opinion. It's not really the best, but it will work for now. It's a placeholder. But in terms of atmosphere, this is probably a D. The fog really does not help, and even when the map is clear, it also does not help really that much. So I'm unable to enjoy this map fully. It also doesn't help that the plane from Sandstorm has arrived here, and it's gonna be present in other maps as well. But compared to those maps, here it's even more annoying because it's all close range, so you need to be able to hear. I know this is realism, but I find it dumb that you can't hear literally everything that you have to hear in this very important map. I get maybe that's a way of balancing out sound, but it's really not doing it for me. This D. I don't like this map. So yeah, there's really not much I can say because it's a placeholder. I'm not going to be including any placeholder maps like Crossroads or Terminal because I haven't gotten to play those and I can't get them into my private server yet. However, from what I've seen with like downtown, I'm not enjoying it. Yeah. And also it's so white. Like, why is it so white? It's like it's winter even though there's no like sun or any, like there's no snow, there's no nothing. I don't know why. It's just so white. Yes. Our next map is Claustrophobic V3, one of the OG maps from when I first played this game. Claustrophobic V3 has undergone only two main changes that have been really noticeable. The first one is the one that happened in 0.22, which was the decor update, and the second one is the trucks update, which were made to fill the open area in the middle of the map. Now on to gameplay. Yeah, gameplay is probably one of, if not the best of any map in Deadline. I'd say that the Insurgent area in particular is probably one of the best areas. The entire building complex that Insurgents have is one big area that you can either fight through the corridors with, or if you're lazy, spawn camp. Now, spawn camping is probably not a good thing, but if you're really low on cash, it's a good way to get some cash. However, if you choose to fight the more proper way, the entire building complex, the central building complex where all the spawns run out of, is actually very fun if you have a competent team on both sides, the enemy and your side. Then it's really fun to be fighting through the corridors and fighting to gain control over the building so that you can move on to the other side. The large warehouse is also good. I enjoy it because there's at least a modicum of cover that exists, and it's not just an open area unlike some other areas. However, I have mixed feelings on the trucks being added. In the central part, it is necessary because otherwise it's just turns into trench warfare until someone throws a grenade and everything gets screwed up, and then everyone goes everywhere and you don't even know what's happening anymore. But on the other side, the part with the smaller building complex that leads into the central courtyard area, I'd call it, of the Insurgent side or the Anto side, yeah, I don't think the truck was a good idea. It is necessary for that area to have a open point from the central warehouse on the security area, simply because it allows for the only kind of long-range gunfights you can find without, well, camping on the right side of security spawn or Sino spawn. But all in all, generally, this is probably the best map all around when it comes to gameplay. S tier. This is still my favorite map to play on, simply because of how simple yet complicated it is. I'd say this map has the highest skill ceiling out of any of them, because a new player can do well on this map. An experienced player, if they memorize the map and if they use the different choke points to their advantage, can get an extremely good game. Most best games of players that I've seen are probably on Claustrophobic V3 as opposed to Claustrophobic V4. As for decor though, it's not the best. It's pretty bland and we don't have as much decoration as on V4, so it's probably gonna get a C along with downtown. The atmosphere too isn't really the best because it's really not much. There's just a few gunshots. However, there is enough like white noise that I can enjoy it, and there's not as much obnoxious plane in the sky, so I think this is gonna get a B. But yes, overall, I think this is a very gameplay-oriented map, not as so much as a decor map or a map that has a good atmosphere. So while you may not get the Deadline feel that you get from some other maps like Sandstorm, it's definitely one of the best places if you just want to have a good fight with the other players. And now, that's all for Claustrophobic V3. Let's move on to our next map. Well, we're finally at the end of 3 of the 9 maps. I'll consider this a part 1 and there's gonna be a part 2 and a part 3 which I'll be working on once I get back from my holiday. I am actually recording this before my holiday and this is going to come out after it. So, you don't know it but you've been waiting a long time. But of the 3 maps, I'd say my favorite is Sandstorm, of course. It scores the highest in the tier list, but on top of that, it's just really enjoyable in terms of the atmosphere, and it just leans very heavily into that deadline feel, yeah, the deadline feel that I don't really see in other games, even Insurgency. So yes, stay tuned for part 2 and part 3. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a good one.